as they attempt their perilous escape, and a South Korean pastor who's devoted his life to helping North Korean refugees. This film has been heralded as a must-see documentary for anyone who cares about the cause of freedom, and one of the most dramatic flights to freedom ever captured on film. We were honored to be an impact partner on the film, and overall just thrilled for this incredibly important opportunity to share an intimate glimpse into the modern day Underground Railroad that has helped tens of thousands of North Korean refugees escape and reach freedom. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Hannah Song, and I am CEO here at Liberty in North Korea. If this is your first time joining us for a Link event, welcome. Just to share briefly about who we are, Liberty in North Korea is an international NGO working with the North Korean people to achieve their freedom. We help North Korean refugees escape through a modern-day underground railroad, and we have been able to help over 1,300 North Korean refugees and their children safely escape and begin new lives in South Korea and in the United States. We then support North Korean refugees in their new lives in freedom, and we also help build their capacity as storytellers, as advocates, and agents of change working together with us on this issue. Lastly, we develop strategies and initiatives that will increase the North Korean people's access to information and technology inside the country. So before we jump into things, just a few quick housekeeping reminders. First, we want to spend as much time as possible answering your questions. So feel free to start dropping them into the chat now. My colleague Alyssa is there and will be chatting with everyone, gathering your questions. Let's get things started in the chat now by dropping in some comments about where you're joining us from and what brought you here. I'm currently in Long Beach at Link's office in California, and Sue and Jana are both joining us from New York. All right, next. So for some reason you're having any sound issues we found, or if the quality is not good, you can try to switch from your phone to the computer. Usually the computer is better. And also if we freeze on the screen or anything, you can just leave the event and try to rejoin. That usually solves the problem. Finally, we do have live captioning enabled. So if you'd like to use that, be sure to turn that on. And if you're having any issues, just send us a quick message in the chat. All right, let's get started. I am delighted to introduce Dr. Sumi Terry and Jana Edelbaum, two of the producers who embarked on this journey with their amazing team 7 years ago to make this incredible film. Dr. Sumi Terry is one of the world's leading experts on the Korean Peninsula and East Asia. She has served as a senior analyst at the CIA, director at the National Security Council, deputy national intelligence officer at the National Intelligence Council, and National Intelligence Fellow at the Council on Foreign Relations. That's a lot of work in intel. Since leaving the government, Dr. Terry has been the director of the Asia Program and the Hyundai Motor Korea Foundation Center for Korean History and Public Policy at the Wilson Center, a senior fellow at the Center for Strategic and International Studies, and a senior research scholar at Columbia University. Welcome, Sue.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Of course. Jana Edelbaum is an Emmy Award-winning producer and founder of Ideal Partners, a television and film production company in New York City. Previously, she's produced documentaries House of Z, Waiting for Hackney, and narrative films Strange Weather, The Inevitable Defeat of Mr. and Pete, Idina Menzel, Which Way to the Stage, among many others. Her current projects include The Librarians and TV series Nestora. And she has been fearlessly leading this incredible group and team in creating Beyond Utopia and really bringing this film to life. Jana and Sue, thank you both so much, not only for taking the time to talk to us today, but for producing such an incredibly powerful and impactful film. I seriously have so much respect and gratitude for all of your tremendous work, your tenacity, the relentless hustle behind the scenes that I know it took to make this film a reality. It's incredible that Beyond Utopia is 100% on Rotten Tomatoes, one of the best reviewed and received films of the year. This film has been literally around the world in over 30 film festivals globally. It has had 7 wins, 43 nominations for awards, including the British Academy of Film and TV Awards. I know y'all were just out there in the UK at that awards show. The Directors Guild of America, London Critics Circle, Producers Guild of America, so many incredible awards. This film was shortlisted for the Oscars, and it won the Audience Award for U.S. Documentary at the Sundance Film Festival and the DuPont Columbia Award for Excellence in Journalism. Beyond Utopia has been distributed in over 25 countries worldwide, which is absolutely fantastic. And some of our supporters were even texting us photos of the documentary being featured on their JetBlue flights, which was next level to hear about. So this level of visibility for an authentic, humanizing story about the North Korean people is truly unprecedented. So I want to start with you, Jana. How did you first become interested in the North Korea issue, and why did you want to make this film?
Thank you, Hannah. And thank you again to you and everybody at Link for all of your help and support along the way as well. We really, truly couldn't have done it without you and your team as well. I originally read an autobiography by Hyun-seo Lee called The Girl with Seven Names. And I remember thinking to myself, how could I not have ever heard this story or even been aware of the plight of the North Korean people? I feel like I'm an educated person and I read the headlines, but nobody was ever talking about it. And additionally, I think what attracted me to the story was just my own familial background. My family had to flee Nazi Germany in the late 20s, early 30s. Some of them got out, some of them did not. And I was struck by the parallels of what it must be like and the challenges facing people fleeing totalitarianism. But because I really did not know anything, I was fortunate enough to know one woman from the playground where our sons were in kindergarten together, who, lo and behold, was a Korea expert. And that, of course, was Sumi Terry. So I knew that there was no way I could embark on anything without actually going to an expert. And I went to Sue, and she opened up this entire world to me.
That's awesome. Well, so we've known each other for a while working on this issue, and your previous work was mostly in government and think tanks. So how did you end up getting involved in the film, and what prompted your shift away from the usual work you're doing in the policy realm? Why did you want to jump into this project?
So I'm so grateful to Jana for including me in this. As she said, she was literally one of my only mom friends that I had, because I don't know if people who are watching this know, but I live in New York but work in Washington, so I commute. And while my family lives in New York, I do this thing, so I don't get to have a lot of mom friends. All I know is that there's this kind of very fierce woman who is in the film business. And she calls me one day, and as she said, I read this book. I'm this educated, erudite person living in New York. Why do I not know, what's going on in North Korea to this degree? And I'm like, well, this is not even your fault, because our media and our attention is so much focused on the regime, the nukes, the missile tests, and so on. There's not enough focus on these issues. Anyway, she said, we need to get this out. We need to make a film about this story. And of course, what Beyond Utopia turned out to be is has evolved. It's much more than Hyunso's story. But that was the impetus. And when she initially asked me to join this project, and I thought about this, I don't know anything about making film. Jana does, but I'm a North Korea expert. And there has been always this frustration that on human rights issues, humanitarian issues, there's just not been a way to get the message out. Like, no matter, you can write briefing books, you can brief the Congress, you can write op-eds, but it just does not resonate. And I understood film is a very powerful medium. I didn't know much about what it takes to produce a film, but I knew that much, that film is a powerful medium to tell a story, right? Through individual stories, sometimes you can really reach people, you can tell a larger story. So I knew that much. So I thought, you know what? This is something different. Let me try it. I trust this woman. She seems fierce. I love fierce women. That's why I love you, Hannah. So there was this instinct connection, and I felt like, let's try this, because I believe in the power of a film to tell a story, larger story.
That's great. And I guess, on that topic then, Sue, when did you start working on North Korea? How long has it been?
I joined the CIA right before 9/11. So that's 2001.
Okay.
And before that, I was doing my PhD program and I wrote, I was doing Korea studies at the Fletcher School at Tufts, but I joined the government in 2001. So that's several decades.
So it's been some time since you've been working on focusing on really becoming an expert on the North Korea issue. And over that period of time, what are some of the biggest changes that you've seen really since then on the issue? And even more specifically, even on the narrative of North Korea. You touched on the influence and the impact of the media and the narrative that the media kind of perpetuates on North Korea. But what are some big changes on the issue from the work you've done that you've seen during the time you started doing this work? And then separately, what do you think about the narrative on North Korea and has that changed over that period of time as well?
So sadly, when I started following North Korea, it was during the Kim Jong-il regime, right? Kim Jong-un's father. And after Kim Jong-un took over in 2011, a lot of people somehow thought maybe things could change, the regime could change, maybe he's a reform-minded guy, maybe he would pursue a different policy than his father and grandfather and so on. But we all know what happened. Kim Jong-un doubled down on the nuclear program and the missile program and so on. So from the regime level, I don't think a lot of that has changed. Just everything just accelerated, right, in terms of the nuclear and missile development. The change I've seen, and this is why, Link does a lot of work on this, and you guys also emphasize this, the change we've seen is actually at the ground level, right? That's where the changes occur. But again, the media and everybody else is not really focused on that because the overwhelming focus when we talk about North Korea is on the regime and what Kim Jong-un is saying and on the nuclear WMD program, the weapons of mass destruction program, we're missing that there are actually changes that's happening on the ground level. That no matter how much the regime tries, information is getting in there. We want to expedite that, but it's getting in there. People are doing their own thing to survive, the markets, the Jangmadang generation, and so on, the youth. So the changes that I've seen is on the ground level. And, sadly, at the regime level and the state level, the policies have not really changed.
Yeah, absolutely. And then in terms of like the narrative on North Korea changing, we still don't hear a ton. We don't hear a lot really about North Korean people themselves. I can imagine in the work that you've done as well, working in think tanks and policy with government, there hasn't been a lot of really an emphasis.
Yeah, unfortunately, and we're at fault too because I work at think tanks. It is hard to focus on the narratives of the people because the policymakers are always focused on what's happening in terms of the OICBM test and this and that, and what are they going to do, and reentry vehicle and so on. So we are responding to the policymakers' needs, and so we are ignoring what's happening. So in terms of narrative too, it's really hard to focus on the people. So that gets drowned out, even though the changes are actually coming from the people at the ground level.
That's right. I do have to say, I do appreciate, Sue, in the times that we've met before, even with our advocacy fellows and some of the young North Koreans we've worked with, I've always appreciated your sincere interest in hearing their stories and in really being able to incorporate the experience of North Korean people into the work you do, into your research, and always, even if it's not always something from a policy perspective that you can push, I've always appreciated that you have been willing and wanting to sit down and to hear those narratives firsthand from North Korean people, to be aware of that. And so I think it only makes sense that you would jump into this project and be part of it. Jana, I'll switch over to you really quickly. It has been incredible having a front seat to seeing this film being made just from the very beginning when it was just an idea and we were meeting in your office in New York. Not only has the idea around the film changed pretty significantly, but I don't come from this world, and as Sue said, neither does she. There are so many incredible, unique challenges in making a film, a documentary at that, and then piled on top of that, so many unique challenges when you're working on North Korea, working with North Korean people, with North Korean subjects, working on the issue of North Korea from a security perspective, even just from a public perception perspective, how people receive this. So what are some of the really unique challenges you faced when you were making this film compared to some of the other films you've worked on? Yeah, go ahead.
Well, Hannah, I think you know this because I shared this frustration with you and Sue. The greatest shock to me, it was not that people in our own industry, the film industry, weren't scared of going head to head on this subject. I mean, of course, with particularly I was about to say the dictator, with the oh my God, I'm blanking. The one that was hacked, the Sony film. The
Interview?
Yeah, in the interview.
Thank you, in the interview. So from an industry standpoint, everybody in the industry would literally run the opposite direction when I would even start talking about this film. But people in the documentary space, I think, have a much higher tolerance for risk and for attempting to tell the truth about any situation. It's journalism at the end of the day. It's filmed journalism. Nonetheless, I still found it tremendously difficult to get any support whatsoever from inside of the Korean communities in Korea or Korean American community. It was not until I had a finished film that was about to premiere at Sundance, so after almost 6 years of work, that our first Korean investor came on board. And I think that very much speaks to the culture of fear, the true fear that has been instilled in many Koreans by this regime, that to do anything might actually result in repercussions. Furthermore, the movie does not pull any punches when it comes to condemning China for their implicit role in capturing and repatriating North Koreans. And I think that many people have relationships with China, whether it's personal or professional. And again, there was real fear of going public with this story. So it was very, very difficult to find a group of people that were so disconnected from the subject that in many ways that offered freedom through naivete. We truly, I think, were very naive, and that gave us a fearlessness to attack this subject. But it was tough.
Yeah, absolutely. So many ups and downs throughout that whole.
But again, I just want to say though that the story, fundamentally, especially the one that we ended up, and when we started out telling Hyunseo's story, we ended up telling a very different story in many ways, still sharing the theme of, leaving the dangers of both staying and leaving North Korea. And I think that the personal plight of our subjects, in addition to the absolute heroism of Pastor Kim, appealed to people because it personalized this story. It made it relatable for people who had nothing to do with North or South Korea.
Absolutely. Before I jump into the next question, just a quick reminder to please continue to drop your questions into the chat, and we'll be getting to them very shortly. This question is for Jana or Sue, whoever wants to answer. This is, as we had talked about before, when we're working on this issue, it is such a sensitive issue, especially when we talk about North Korean subjects. Not only have they experienced, they have, experienced this incredibly brave journey escaping North Korea, but their willingness to even be willing to share their story, to show their faces. And also there are so many nuances to the issue, to that journey, to the challenges that North Korean people face. So how were you able to balance the importance of telling a really true and authentic story while also maintaining the safety and the security of the North Korean subjects, the people you were working with, and also the secret nature of the underground and the underground people that you were working with?
Well, I can answer it from a straight up production standpoint. And I have to say that first and foremost, making sure that our film participants were 100% on board with telling their story was of paramount importance. And in fact, even throughout the journey, literally until 2 weeks before we premiered this movie at Sundance, we showed our subjects what, we believed was the final film and said to them, are you sure? We know that you have continued to work with us. We know that you've signed releases, but this is the story that we're about to go public with. Do you want to get this out into the world? And I think that the longer we worked with them, the more adamant they were that they wanted their truths to be seen. And that's incredibly brave of them. And then throughout the entire year, the 30 film festivals and the extraordinary interviews and media, they wanted to be a part of this journey. Their goal is to tell the truth, to be storytellers of their own story and of the 26 million people left behind. And it very much became their mission to continue to tell this story in any way that they can. So whether it was in print, through interviews or Q&As at film festivals. And we're so grateful that they entrusted their stories to us. In terms of the security, again, it's so brave. They put themselves on the line. Pastor Kim, physically, he's a complete wreck from all of the rescues that he's done. His back, his neck, puts himself in danger every time he goes on a rescue mission. But I literally don't think that he knows any other way of living at this point. This is his lifeblood. This is his mission. So we took our lead from them the entire time. And whatever they were comfortable with, we wanted to make it happen.
So I would just follow up by saying that, so two things, that we did take lead from Pastor Kim, for example, in where we can shoot, where it's safe and not safe. And we trusted him completely. He trusted us. And it took many months to build that trusting relationship. So we took lead from him. And at Jana's point about even just weeks before Sundance, premiering at Sundance, Madeline, our director, was literally putting together a different kind of film in case Soyeon, for example, didn't want to show her son, and we were following her son's story. So again, we were prepared to have a very different kind of film that didn't include it. So we really, left it up to our subjects in the film to take the lead and tell us what they were comfortable with.
Mm. What has been the reaction of the people that were featured in the film, of the Rowe family, Soyeon, Pastor Kim? I remember being with them when they saw it for the first time at Sundance, and that was so powerful, but also so emotional. And since they've seen this film so many times while you've been traveling together, screening it and showing it, what has been some of their reaction, how they feel about it, how it turned out, kind of the audience, people's responses when you're traveling around the world and sharing this film? Could you share a little bit?
I will start. So we got to spend a lot of time with them. And also, of course, the Rowe family is on that they are, they were all sitting behind us. And can you just imagine? They have never been to a movie theater. They've never seen a movie. And the first film that they see is like you're at Park City at Sundance about yourself. So they were blown away. Unfortunately, like Soyeon, I still remember she was sitting behind me and she was crying the whole time. So, that's a little bit devastating. But I think the response really is just overwhelming gratitude. Even for Soyeon, I'll speak for her because we spent a lot of time with her and we went to so many festivals. After the film ends and, we do Q&A, and there are women, like people who are lining up to just hug her, hold her. I don't know how many times we've heard people say, we don't speak the language. I'm not from North Korea, you're North Korean, and I'm from wherever I'm from, but I'm a mother, I'm a father. I feel you, I hear you. People are holding her, they're hugging, they're crying. And I think that response is just so overwhelming. So she's grateful. There are some downsides, like we were just recently at BAFTA. It was very surreal. She's walking red carpet. Then there was also, pang of like, she's always thinking about her son, right? So there's that part too. But in terms of audiences, overwhelmingly warm reception and reaction, there's so much gratitude, and so it's been just very wonderful to see that. And I'm a big fan of, we got really lucky too. The Rowe family is amazing. The grandma is overwhelming favorite.
Yeah.
Pastor Kim, obviously, he's heroic, but also Soyeon really is, Hannah, like she's so dignified and amazing and wonderful. The whole experience has been incredible in this sense. I don't know, Jana, if you want to
No,
add.
I second everything. I think it's also been incredibly validating, particularly for Soyeon, because this was such a monumental decision. She did not know whether speaking out would have a positive or negative effect on her son's condition. Nobody really knows for sure what could happen. And yet she felt very, very strongly that the movie gave her her voice back. It was stolen from her when they repatriated her son. She was devastated. I mean, she truly had two choices. And one is to, I think, be passive and internalize the sadness and the anger and the fear. And the other is to become a warrior. And she's a warrior now. She's a fighter, and it's given her a platform and visibility. And it's extraordinary to see that as much as it is difficult and painful for her to relive this every time she has to talk about the movie, it's also empowered her tremendously.
Absolutely. I remember being there at Sundance, and also just how emotional it was, just the up and down, just so incredible, just these two stories juxtaposed side by side and yet so different, these outcomes. And I remember also Zion at the end of the event and everyone coming up and crying, and I so appreciated, she jokingly at the end of that when we were leaving was so touched and moved, and also said, man, Americans cry so much. And she was so surprised at how emotional people were. I think that level of empathy, like you said, Sue, people feeling like I feel that deeply as a mother or as somebody that can empathize with that story. I can't even imagine what you're going through. And so I really, really, just everyone in the film was so incredible, in so many ways. I wonder if there's any other like fun memories or funny stories that come to mind when you think about the time you've spent together with them, since you guys have spent a lot of time all together.
There are so many. I mean, burgers and fries, going out for the Rowe family's first burgers and fries in Sundance. There are two stories very quickly that I want to tell. And one speaks to how Soyeon was so, she almost had a sign from this story that being involved and going public with this film was the right thing. Soyeon, of course, left North Korea years ago. And at our Sundance screening, they had Sunday off, and Pastor Kim was going to be preaching at a local church in Salt Lake City. And at the church, it had been publicized that Pastor Kim was coming, but not that he was bringing with him the Rowe family or Soyeon. She made a last-minute decision to attend the church service. And she is standing up on the pulpit, and she hears her North Korean name being called out from the audience. And there was a man in the audience who was her neighbor and best friend in North Korea, who had defected before her. No one, of course, got information back, whether he was alive or captured, etc. So they had no idea that each other were alive and well as defectors now. And he was in the audience in the church at Salt Lake. And they reunited, and he ended up coming with us to other film festivals like the Telluride Film Festival, and he cooked this. He was a chef actually in the States.
He drove 6 hours and brought samgyeopsal and other Korean food and fed the entire film crew. Incredible.
And again, that would have never happened had she, and he's a friend, they talk to this day. So that's one story. Another story, just to give a sense of how harrowing it was, as you know, we worked with 53 separate brokers through this escape. Of course, we could not go to North Korea, to China. It would have put the operation, the film, the subjects in jeopardy. When Pastor Kim and the Rowe family and our director of photography and our sound engineer, Daewon, DP Kim, and Pastor Kim, they dropped the Rowe family off into Laos from Vietnam, they had to retrace their journey back to Vietnam so that they could legally fly into Laos. So while the Rowe family had to enter illegally, they had to go back to Vietnam to fly in legally. And the brokers ended up kidnapping them and extorting more money out of them. Pastor Kim's back had gone out. Our director of photography had kidney stones. They were given no food or water. They had to grill frogs for their dinner. We have pictures of this. So, you know, we were so relieved when the family got in, but then Pastor Kim and our crew disappeared. Wow. So there was never one moment without stress in making this project.
Wow. I mean, that certainly didn't make it into the film, but
we have the photos.
Yeah. I want to jump into some of the questions that people have been dropping in here. The first question is, and I guess this is kind of writing off that last question as we're talking about our North Korean friends that were in the film. There were so many, obviously, it was like an emotional roller coaster, of course, but was there a particularly heartbreaking moment during this journey, or what was the happiest moment when you were making this film, happiest moment for the team, for the film staff? And this question comes from Stuart from Canada.
I can take this, Stuart. I think there were so many horrific moments. Of course, when we got the original phone call that Soyeon's son had been captured, we were without words, devastated. It was beyond imagination. Our heart broke for her in so many places. There were so many joyous times when the Rowe family made it out, when everybody made it back safely, our crew and Pastor Kim, when we won the audience award at Sundance, because, you know, we were making a foreign language documentary about one of the most dangerous places on the planet, but nobody talks about this story. So when an audience actually validated that they connected to these people and to the story, that was also one of the most validating moments, at least for I think our whole film team.
I'll give you a lighthearted anecdote. You know, when we were at Sundance, and this is the Rowe family's first visit out, you know, they're now in the United States, they're in Park City, and the electricity goes out, and they're without electricity for like hours. And I'm like, we are like frantic explaining, well, I guess it's like North Korea. I'm like, no, it's not like North Korea. It just happened to be, you know, without electricity. Remember that, Jana?
It happened twice. It happened in the Camden Film Festival as well. A big storm.
They keep thinking like this is what the United States is like. I guess it's not all that different. I'm like, no, that's not true. But it happened to them twice.
Yeah.
Oh, what are the chances? That's so crazy. I remember when that went out when we were at Sundance, and that was very funny. It was like, no,
It
no,
was
no,
kind
no.
of romantic though for us. We had to like
Candles,
fireplace to make food and whatnot.
lots of candles, lots of wine, so it worked out well. Um, Daniel from California has a few questions. Maybe I'll direct this at Sue. What do you think of the Biden administration's efforts around North Korean human rights? And what do you think about Ambassador Julie Turner's nomination?
So in general, I think US policy, government policy can use more focus on human rights issues. That said, it's a start, right? At least now we have, I mean, I was a little bit frustrated in the beginning of the Biden administration because it took so long for us to get to this, have a human rights envoy and get going on this. But now that we are, at least we have Julie Turner, and she actually even screened this film at the State Department, and you were there, Hannah. So I do think now we're on the right track. And I think, you know, every indication is that she seems to be very serious and focused on trying to do, you know, what she can to bring human rights issues to the forefront. So, you know, my answer is, in general, I'm frustrated with US government's lack of focus in terms of prioritizing human rights. And that's not the Biden administration thing. It's just across every administration. I think we can prioritize it further. That said, I think now that we have a human rights envoy and whatnot, and we both met Julie, and I think we're back on track. So hopefully we can do a lot on that front.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think this is a really interesting time, hopefully a very productive time on the issue. The U.S. Ambassador for North Korean Human Rights is Julie Turner. The South Korean ambassador for North Korean human rights is Ambassador Lee Shin-hwa, another strong female that is really a staunch advocate on this issue and on human rights issues. And the UN Special Rapporteur is also another woman, Elizabeth, Rapporteur Salmon. So it's a very interesting time, a wonderful time. And I think as difficult as the issue has been over these last few years, particularly coming out of COVID and the impact that that's had on the ground, on the North Korean people, I am hopeful that with all of these key people in place and with a very strong determination, that we will hopefully be able to see some progress on various fronts, particularly the human rights front, and bringing more attention to North Korean people. We have a few people, actually, Chuck and Ron both had questions about whether there was any response from the North Korean government about this film. Did they try to interfere during the production of the film in the pre-release? And also, were there any outright threats from the regime at all?
So we expected there to be a response, and until very recently, there was no response whatsoever. Recently, there have been some criticisms from, I can only call them North Korean apologists who operate in the United States, who are who have their own reasons for their opinions. I do not understand their position, to be brutally honest, but they have their own position. But they waited a year to raise their hands until our film was at the pinnacle of success. We were shortlisted for the Oscar. And then they started writing articles to question some of the points, particularly policy issues, that our film doesn't make. We did not make a political film. We made a human rights film. And so, you know, I guess discussion about these issues is what we were hoping for, and around these issues. We'd love a back and forth with anybody who has any criticisms of our film. All they have to do is reach out to us, and we're very happy to engage. Some people, though, are so intent on making their own points that they're not interested in discussion. They're just interested in attacking. And so
and criticisms are usually around US policy. You know, Korean War, US was at partly at fault. The reason why the North Korean economy suffers is through sanctions and so on. Again, as Jana said, our film does not advocate a policy, right? It's kind of we don't even get into that, but so so we didn't really, so that's kind of new and more recent development that we've been seeing, but otherwise we have not heard from the regime. But I'm sure
fundamentally, we also made a movie which, in fact, demonstrates to the world that Kim Jong-un is, in many ways, to be feared. He's very serious about his agenda. And there is nothing that will stand in the way of him trying to achieve this. We're showing the human cost of that agenda. So we're not doing anything but simply shining a light on what everybody knows to be true, but just generally speaking is never spoken about, never shown, never discussed.
Yeah. We have a question here from Peter, and he asks, what would you say is the most subtle or nuanced North Korean propaganda? He said, Westerners tend to have blinders on with leftist authoritarianism and can tend to kind of fall, it's easy to fall into, I guess, some of these misunderstandings or in some of this type of propaganda. So do you have any thoughts, maybe this is for Sue, on any of the type of subtle or nuanced North Korean propaganda that you think that Westerners are sort of blind to?
North Korean subtle propaganda?
Mm-hmm.
Subtle propaganda. I don't know, like if they're subtle about their propaganda. Do you, Hannah? It's hard one to see if they're subtly trying to, because I think their propaganda is more overt, no, about everything that's wrong with the US and South Korea. And we called our film Beyond Utopia because their propaganda is still trying to portray North Korea as a society that's still, a place that's, I don't think people now are buying the utopia angle necessarily, but it's a place to it's better off than what it really is. I don't know about subtle. The part it's subtle is kind of throwing me off because I don't know if North Koreans are subtly doing the propaganda there. I feel like they're very overt about their message they're sending in terms of, like recently they're like, South Korea is #1 hostile state, like they had just changed the whole shift in policy. They're very almost extreme and overt. I don't know if they do things subtly. Maybe
there's nothing subtle either about meeting with Putin and selling him rockets.
It reminds me actually of, I think, also a very memorable and poignant part in the film with Grandma Ro, when she kind of had that moment, during the interviews on the couch, and then sort of again at the end of the film, once she was in, was it in Southeast Asia or was it in South Korea? But for her, kind of this evolution of even her own thinking and kind of the impact of her perspective from that propaganda. And then once she had finally escaped and kind of the unraveling of that.
So Hannah, I think that's really one of my favorite scenes in the film, because when the grandmother is in Vietnam, she arrives in Southeast Asia, she looks out and she sees that it's actually a prosperous country, and she's shocked. And her response is, well, it cannot be our leader's fault. It cannot be Kim Jong-un's fault that our country is so poor. So she says, we are at fault. Like, it must be our fault that our country is so poor. So back to that, that's obviously, we don't have to talk about how much North Korea is all about propaganda and ideological indoctrination, because that just shows you she's ideologically indoctrinated. That's her natural response. And just as the little girls, when you ask the girls, Madeline, I think, asked in the film, like, what do you think about Kim Jong-un? And they still have to respond with, well, he's the greatest man in the world, right? And this kind of ideological indoctrination is so deeply rooted. You just see it in their natural response. And that's not rehearsed. That's not staged. They have not made it into South Korea. And that's the most natural response for them. But this is what I mean by there's nothing subtle about the way North Korea does ideological indoctrination and propaganda. it's there. It's very much planned. This is very much. There's no other country on the planet. In terms of focus, like using it as a tool, right? Ideological indoctrination and propaganda and everything else for regime survival.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's also one of the many favorite moments I have in the film too. And I think we have seen that as well when we have done this work and have helped North Koreans escape. And as we hear their stories, that's always one of the most interesting things is when they had that sort of aha moment or that moment of realization, or I like to say, if you've seen the Truman Show, the movie, when he hits the wall. And a lot of North Koreans will share there was sometimes a very distinct moment when something went off and they realized, oh, what believed, what I have been told for so long is in fact not true at all. And so I think that's always one of the most interesting things that we ask our North Korean friends and that we try to learn and understand from them. I know that we're running out of time here. We have about 10 minutes, and so we have time for just a few more questions. This question has come up a few times by a few different people, but what kind of impact do you hope this film will have? And, maybe another way to put that is also like, what do you hope that people will learn and take away from this film?
Just quite personally, first, a basic level of understanding about the people of North Korea. Again, even now, the stories of the human side, the conditions are still not widely discussed. So I think it educates on that basis. Two, our movie, I really do feel is a love letter to freedom in many ways. And I think that many people, particularly who have grown up in the United States, who've always known what freedom is, it's almost unimaginable to contemplate a world where every moment from when you wake up to when you go to sleep, you have a set of rules that you have to follow or you can die. The choice that we have in this country is an extraordinary thing. And so I hope that it says to people, this is a privilege. Please don't be apathetic. Use your voice, get involved, have an opinion, get informed. And I really hope that it has that effect on people who see it.
And, I think awareness is really key. And, maybe people who are watching this right now, they're already interested in North Korea. They're already probably very aware of what's happening in North Korea. But there are many, many people who are not. And so by watching this film, I think people finally get it, right? So, when I was on the road, and I talk about this a lot, I used to try to explain a lot of use statistics, right? We have 120,000 people in political prison camps, whatnot. And it goes over people's head, like, okay, whatever, there's X number of people in political prison camps and so on. But you watch this film and you realize, oh, wow, Soyeon's son, that 17-year-old boy who was trying to make it out of North Korea is right now in a political prison camp. So it resonates more. But so I do think it is hopefully having an impact in terms of raising awareness in the general public, even with at the government level. South Korean Foreign Minister Park Jin hosted a screening, had a viewing in front of the entire foreign ministry. Minister of Unification had a screening for entire Ministry of Unification. These are people in South Korea who are very aware of these issues, but they still watched it. Julie Turner at State Department had a screening. So I do feel already very, a lot of gratitude that it's not just the general public, but even both in US and South Korea, they're trying to show us to increase awareness. And so I think that everything begins from that. So that's a big start.
Absolutely. And it is absolutely undeniable that this film has helped to reach thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, dare I say millions of people.
It is millions, Hannah. It's actually tens of millions, if not ultimately hundreds, because most of those sales in 25 countries are to public broadcasters. So the movie is going to be made available to hundreds of millions of people.
Incredible. That in and of itself is an absolutely incredible outcome of this film and everyone's incredible hard work and everything that all of you have poured into it, including our North Korean friends. I want to wrap up probably here with maybe two more questions for you. Esther from Minnesota is wondering, do you have plans to make more films like this or other kinds of media to help spread this message?
Films, you mean about North Korean defectors?
North Korea.
I personally do not. As we mentioned, this was a really heavy lift. And I'm so proud of this movie. I'm so thrilled that you, Hannah, through Link, are able to continue to get it out there. And Sue, in her work every day, eats.
Nice to be able to sort of have another opportunity in my lifetime to be involved in a project, a film project that have this kind of impact.
We'll give you a call when we're ready to work on another project, Sue. Is there another film or documentary or another documentary or otherwise about North Korea that you would recommend for people to watch? Of course, after they watch Beyond Utopia, if they haven't yet already.
I mean, there was the film about the assassination of Kim Jong-un's half-brother. There is, I think that's probably one of the few. There's the one about the kidnapping of the film star. I forgot the name of that one.
General and like something.
Yeah. Something. I mean, they're all fascinating.
Yeah, no, I myself, I was interview subject in many of the BBC, PBS documentaries, and they're all pretty well, they're well made in terms of learning more about North Korea. There are many good films about, it's not like this in terms of live defection and capturing things like this, but it's a still good background documentaries to learn more about North Korea.
And they're great books. There's Barbara Demick's Nothing to Envy. There's The Aquariums of Pyongyang. There's some great books too. Joseph Kim wrote a great book. And so they're wonderful books that you can read.
Yeah, absolutely. And we have a lot of great resources listed on our website if people are interested in learning more too. I want to wrap up with one final question. I know that this is probably on a lot of people's minds, but how are all of the families and the film participants doing? How is Pastor Kim, the Rowe family, Soyeon, and what are they doing now after the film? What are their lives like? What are the girls up to? Yeah.
They're incredible. It's so extraordinary how adaptable people are when they're young. The girls are just living their finest lives. One is training to be a K-pop star. One is almost, a concert pianist. They are extraordinary young women. I know that they want to study in the States one day, maybe for university. They are amazing. Mama Rowe, the mother, is actually starting an NGO to help. She's training as a social worker to help other women, female defectors in South Korea. Soyeon's NGO is just going from strength to strength. She's lecturing and traveling all over the world, again, helping female defectors. And Pastor Kim, God bless him, is at it with escapes and traveling and helping to promote the film. They are all doing extraordinarily well.
Yeah.
And the father works in tofu factory.
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. Is there any final words, anything that either of you want to say or share before we wrap it up?
Well, I just want to say for everybody, thanks to everybody who's tuning in, because obviously you care about this issue. You care about North Korea, North Korean people, the humanitarian situation that's going on in North Korea. So I have enormous gratitude for people who are like this Wednesday night, I don't know, I guess a Pacific time, but in East Coast time, wherever you're tuning in from, to dedicate your time. And I know you're committed and you're passionate. Otherwise, you'll not be zooming in like this to watch us and to watch this film. And so I want to say thank you and to keep it up. because it's through people like you that change can be made. So bravo to you.
And I want to just say again, please continue to, as Sue said, talk about it, tell your friends. It will be on Hulu, I think, in the third quarter. It is still on ITVS. It's available on iTunes and Amazon Prime. And just again, I want to thank Link, who were an incredible partner to us. Thank you, Hannah. You helped give us more understanding of this world. You helped guide us through some of the pitfalls of this world, and you were always an incredible resource for us to have an accurate depiction of this world. So thank you again for all of the help that you gave to us.
Thank you.
Thank
It was such a privilege and an honor to be able to work side by side with both of you. You're the incredible team that brought this film to life, all of the incredible North Korean friends and Pastor Kim. Just grateful for all of you for making this film. It has and will continue to have immense impact and will help to bring so much deserved attention to this issue. So for everyone, if you have not had a chance to see the film, as Jana mentioned, you can still catch it. It's streaming on PBS, Apple TV, Prime Video, eventually Hulu. You can head to beyondutopiadoc.com. We're going to drop that into the chat. Please go check out the website. You can find all the places to stream the film. I definitely encourage you to watch it. And if you've already seen it, watch it again. Bring some friends and family to join you this time. And you can also find out more about Pastor Kim and his organization, Caleb Mission. We will also drop that link into the chat if you'd like to check out his organization and support him too. Second, please visit libertyinnorthkorea.org or withthenorthkoreanpeople.org. We'd love for you to learn more about the work Link is doing. And if you go to withthenorthkoreanpeople.org, we encourage you to go ahead and sign the pledge that's there, just saying, hey, I'm interested in standing with the North Korean people and joining this movement and getting involved. We'll drop the link in the chat, check it out, and join thousands and thousands of supporters around the world who are standing in solidarity with the North Korean people. As we wrap up, I just want to share that when I first started working at Link over 17 years ago, I honestly could have never imagined that we would have had the privilege to witness and be a part of helping over 1,300 North Korean people escape safely and begin new lives in freedom. These are amazing North Koreans, just like the people in the film. And, these are individuals that never would have imagined having a chance to be reunited with their children, and parents who had dreams of a better future for their kids have finally made that a reality by risking their lives to escape. We've been able to see countless marriages and babies born in a life in freedom, but that's been earned by their parents' sacrifices. We've been able to witness just the unwavering determination of newly arriving North Korean refugees to learn a new language, to learn a whole new culture, and to start a business, get their license, to begin a brand new life. We're seeing a new generation of young activists who are determined to see a free North Korea in their lifetime, and it is inspiring. So if I could just ask everyone here today, just for one thing, please help us continue to tell these stories. Share this film with your friends and family, promote it on your social media networks, sign up and join this movement, find out ways that you can get more involved in this work and in making a real impact in the lives of actual North Korean people, and you can do that today. Jana and Sue, I want to thank you so, so much for sharing all of your insights, for being so generous with your time, for just everything you have poured into making this film a reality. And thank you for all of the impact it has had and will continue to have. I look forward to seeing you both next time I'm in New York. And yeah, and I want to thank everyone that's here today. And just to echo Sue's sentiments, thank you for taking the time to join us on a Wednesday or wherever you are in the world. We have people, I think, even tuning in from Venezuela. So thank you for taking the time to join us. And we hope to see you at our next event.
Thank
Have a
you.